Huh.
All right, bringing you back in here. I'm radius the first couple pieces of fret wire, and I don't know if you can see it or not. It fits the board pretty good actually. Maybe just slightly overbent. And I cleaned the oil. I already cleaned one of them, but now that I set them down there, I don't know which was which. So just do it again. So I'm using naphtha, just a solvent. It's also the same thing as lighter fluid. Actually, I'm getting it as lighter fluid these days because in California you can't buy naphtha over the counter anymore. Even though it's a fuel, I guess they look at it more as a solvent. And for whatever reason, they don't think that's the solvent the average person needs. I don't know. I don't know if it's a chemical thing they're worried about, or if you can make crack out of it, or what the deal is. But you can't buy it in gallons anymore, or quarts. So just in case I need to run some glue up in here, or regardless, really, you just clean it up so there's no oil on the wire where it's going into the guitar. I've got my little neck block with all my holes in it, and I just kind of keep things in order that way. So when you go through the bender, you get first little bit. I could hand bend this a little bit, but I shouldn't have an issue with having enough fret wire. I should have plenty. So I'll just cut that flat section off the end. I don't know why I stepped out of the camera view to do that, but there you go. So flat section is cut off. Usually start down here at the fat end so that you don't end up with fret wire that a skinny piece of fret wire that you can't use up top. I'm debating actually using. I have a fat one, a thicker tang, and a narrower tang. And I'm thinking about sticking the narrower tang up here so I don't distort this this up here at all. It's where you don't have the extra support of the neck. It's real easy to tweak your fretboard down. So anyway, just going to go fuzz over, cut that off. I don't know which. That was right there. I don't know what number that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13. So there we go, 13. And I could obviously cut one and pound it in. I normally use my drill press with a caul on it and press them in. And since I could do that on this neck, and I may decide to do that actually. I'll probably try banging 1 or 2 in and see how that works. I like to press them in. You don't get the recoil when you push them in with the press. 10. Down to 9. And then 8. I am attempting to cut these square to the neck, this way, square to or parallel to the tang. So the T, basically you got the top and then you got the bottom. I'm going to try to cut it so the T is pointing down and you're square to the world. That way you don't pull that tang up and tweak it and distort it, because then it goes in the slot kind of sideways. Skipping 7. So I'm going to go 1, 2, I want to skip 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I should do 7. I'm going to cut 7. And then skip 6. I may end up skipping 8 if I need to bend the board down. There's, I mean, any of these, you know, it just depends on how the thing looks against the straight edge. So we're going to do 5. Yeah, 2, 3, 4, 5. Skip 5. Skip 5, do 6. And then we'll do 4. That was 2, 2, 3. Okay, that's what I was trying to do. That one's long enough to do number 1, so I'm going to go get my little pliers, because it's going to be flatter on one end, because that's the opposite end. So I got a full stick here that I didn't even use. So I have these pliers that I ground this radius into. This is something you can buy, something like this from StewMac. Got a slot in it for the tang to go into. I had to put my visor on so I can actually see what I'm doing. The idea is to take the flat section of fret and tweak it a little bit so it's radiused. Doesn't take a great deal. I had to buy a bunch of frets that were just cut off fret length and bend them by hand to do a Martin, because I couldn't find this site where I got this wire at the time. This is then I overbent it. So anyway, yeah, I had to bend it all by hand, and that looks pretty good. So I said I normally I don't like this hammer. I don't really have a good fret hammer either. So I've been using, when I do this, I got this real light little hammer that I found somewhere. I think I'm going to clip these tangs back a little bit, just behind where the neck is, so that when I file the fret ends off, all you see are the fret ends and not any of the tang. And then I'll fill those holes with dust and super glue. Just going to nip them back enough to do that. So I'll do a couple here on camera. This is similar to doing a bound fretboard, except you don't have to be don't have to sand underneath the tang off, for one thing, like you would on a bound fretboard, because you don't have to worry about dinging the binding. On a bound fretboard, like on the Les Paul, I'm going to have to do this, and then I'm also going to file the residual off of there so you don't see that. I can take a look and see here if I got far enough in. Yeah, looks good there. All right. Put my visor down, get a look at this. All right. I like the look of that. I'm going to bang on this a little bit more. Well, it looks really good. Maybe just a fuzz up over here. I'm pulling up on the fret end here a little bit to see if it's going to pull up on me or not, and it is a little bit. So what I'm going to do, well, since I'm not doing 3, I'll get the second fret in here, and then I'll hit the ends with a little bit of super glue, and I'll clamp a block on there and hold that down. And then just tack the ends in so it can't pull up. Did the same thing, just checking them. Yeah, this one's a little longer, so I'm going to cut them back a fuzz more. These end nippers I modified years ago, and they're just regular, big end nippers, lots of leverage. The one end I left stock, so that when I'm just cutting wire, I just use that. When I want to get close to the edge of the fretboard, or if I'm cutting tangs like this and I want to get right up underneath the crown, I file this flat right here, or ground it flat, and you can see on the face of this that half of it's standard and half of it's ground flat. So that gives me a lot better, clearance right up against the side of the neck when you're trimming board, trimming ends, or like I said, when you're notching these tangs, that you get closer to the up underneath the tang there. I was tempted to buy a set of fret nippers here the last time I was looking at StewMac, I had to order some fret wire. Ordered some fret wire and another nut file from them. And I'm just centering this fret in here so that the tang doesn't show on either end. These aren't terribly tight going in, so definitely going to be glued. I'll run some up underneath there. Which they're tight enough for that. On that Les Paul I may end up actually putting glue all the way across the slot. And they're doing just fine with the hammer. I'm not having to hit them hard enough without distorting anything. All right, I am going to continue. I'm going to be skipping, like I said, third, probably do a couple, skip this one. If I need to do anything at all, I might skip one more and do another one here. But I've got most of them cut. The only one I really missed was number 5 and number 3. So those two, we'll do 3 and then 4, and then we'll skip 5. And then we'll do that one. Anyway, and then once I get all of them in except for those few, I'll check it and see what kind of relief I have in the neck. So there you are. That's where I'm going to leave you off for right now. All right, guys. Hey, bringing you back in here at this stage. Just turned pink Floyd off to bring you back in. So I'm making the ultimate sacrifice. So I'm just nipping the ends of these frets out. I'm not going to do a lot of narration here, I don't think, but you never know if I can keep my mouth shut. Just nipping off the ends here that I left hanging over. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to just file the ends of these things down, throw a taper on them. I didn't bring anything over to do that with, so I'm going to be running around a little bit to get that done as well. I went ahead and I clamped the block on here, ran super glue under the ends of all the frets. Pretty much when you do that, you flip the board up on the edge, and it pretty much goes completely under all that. All my fret ends are down nice and tight. If I don't have a tight one, it'll make a funky noise when I clip it, and you will know that, and I will know that, and then I will deal with it past that. So, but this is that tool I made that is thin right here, so I can get pretty close right up to the edge of the board. I actually touch the edge of the board. I'm not trying to stay away from the edge of the board. These are going to get filed and rounded, eventually. They're going to get beveled over, and then they're going to get, the ends are going to get rounded over a bit and get fret rest that way. As you get up closer, and you get these things closer together, it's very difficult to actually get right up against the board unless you lay the tool over a little bit. And if you do that, then you end up with you could kind of tweak your fret a little bit. Don't like to do that. So far, none of the funky noises. Oh, that one doesn't want to let me grab it. Okay, gonna have to file that one a bit. So obviously, I've got the ends are hitting the deck here. I don't want to get one of those into anything later, so definitely get those out of the way. Flip this around and trim this side. These things, if you've ever messed with these frets at this stage. They're like little knives, and they'll get you. I told you I couldn't shut up. All right. Once again, you know, I talked about earlier, I did this both ways too. I've got a 5 thousandths feeler gauge, and I had 12 thousandths at rest previously, and I just ran the radius block over this thing real briefly after I clamped these. These definitely have not been leveled, not perfectly by any means, and this is a 5 thousandths feeler gauge. I had 12. I said I'd like to end up with, you know, a few. So I'm at less than 5 thousandths right now, out in the middle of the board. I even use my to read the board itself and not the frets. I was doing this a second ago, and you can see I'm just barely starting out here right in the middle of the board. There's 5, so I get 5,000. Not quite. 5,000 with some drag at 3 or so. Right around there, 4.5 thousandths. It's splitting hairs. Anyway, so I'm not in a place that I would pop. I ended up, by the way, using all the same size frets until I got out here, and then I went to a smaller tanged fret. You can't see where out here is. I went to a smaller size tanged fret out here over the fretboard. Excuse me, the extension. And I have a little bit, I don't know if you'll ever be able to see that, and not the way I'm holding it. I got the benches in my way. Anyway, I got just a slightest bit of follow away. It pushed this down ever so slightly. And the funny thing about that is there's narrower frets, and I literally had to glue these things in place. I didn't want pressure in here where it would be forcing this down since I fretted it off of the guitar. So I purposely wanted a loose fitter. I still got some curl out of that, even with a really loose fit. So I've just nipped all those off. That still looks long. Anyway, it doesn't take that long to file these things off, even if they are long. I just have to go find my files. All right, I'll pan out a little bit here just for a second. Okay, so here's a homemade bevel file. I put a notch in it over on this side actually for sharpening scrapers, because I can make sure my scraper's square that way. But on this side, I just drilled some holes here. Just cut a slot the size of the file. Slide the file down, screw it in. I can pull it in or out a little bit to adjust the height. Once all of the frets are, to the edge of the fretboard, then I'll come back and file those off at a bevel. That's about 30 degrees. I get my frets really, really comfortable. with a 30-degree bevel. Gosh, seems like the stock Gibsons were something like 45, and you lose so much real estate on top of your frets when you have a 30 or a 45-degree bevel, you know, and you got to set your strings that much closer together. For the same size nut, you're losing a lot of space there where you can actually set your guitar up at. So I like to leave the frets up a little straighter. 30 degrees is pretty good. By the time you'll see the process. I'm not going to do a full-on level and crown and all that right now because I want to get the neck back on the guitar. So I made my own homemade leveling files as well. I found some files that were very flat, very straight. Just made little handles for them. And this is my fine file, my single cut, and I went ahead and contoured the block a little bit. That actually makes it handy for me just to spot it and go like, there's my fine one. So here's the double cut. So anyway, pretty much, like I said, it does take a bit. This is another part of the process where if you got a loose fret, you will hear it because it will scream at you. And I wouldn't be entirely surprised if I had one or two loose frets, especially up here on this extension, just because of how I had to glue them in. I'm holding this block. I'm not holding this block like totally square to the neck because I don't want to hit neckwood. If I am to get that close, I definitely do not want to be scraping along this edge. So I'm not 90 to the neck here at all, or to the fret. I'm beveled back a tad, and I don't have a recommendation for which way you push or pull your file. I find that I have to go back and forth very often to, you know, so that I get. I'm hitting wood up here just very slightly. You can tell as soon as you hit the wood it slides. The wood of the finish. Okay, feels like I'm hitting there too. Funny thing about the files is that, I mean, you can definitely do damage. Ow. You can definitely do damage. I caught the edge of that heel with my fingernail here. That didn't feel good. Anyway, when you get down to the point where you're hitting the edge, you're hitting finish, or you're hitting wood, it skates. And it's funny how that you can push this across a finished instrument, and if you're not really pushing hard, you're not going to dig in. I don't recommend doing that, but like I said, I go different directions. I personally, I don't think about it that much until I got the camera rolling. I think I tend to have more control when I'm pulling it toward me. There are places, especially when the neck is on the instrument, right, that you don't want to push toward, because it's just too easy to slip, especially when they're long and they catch, and then you might hop over a fret and jam right into some finished part of your instrument. That would not be a good thing to do. Okay, so I have this trash can right here which comes in really handy. It's off camera, you can't see it, but the rest of this stuff is just the floor. But I'm going to flip it around and do the other side. So right now my frets are trimmed on this side, and they're just, you know, pretty much straight up and down. They are kicked back a little bit, like I said, so I don't hit the side of the guitar with the file. Once I get these beveled, all I'm going to do, I gotta check my time on this. I might cut it off. I don't know where I'll break these. Why don't I do that? I'll just go ahead and bevel this side just for demonstration purposes. Then I'm going to go ahead and put some dust down in the holes, so you don't see any fret tang here, you just see the top of the fret, you know, the crown of the fret, and then it'll be beveled back, and then I'm going to put the rosewood dust down in these cracks, and just a drop of super glue, and then that is when I will take my fine file. Believe it or not, I'll do less damage with my fine file than I would with a piece of sandpaper on a block, and I'm going to ride right across the tops of those fills and not damage the existing lacquer at all. So, but now on my bevel file, there is only one way to run it, right? Obviously, it's too long and it's beveled, so I can't just decide to flip it. There's no way to flip it and get going the other way. So, in this case, I'll go ahead and zoom in just a little bit. In this case, you can see the file. I don't know if you can see it or not. It's really hard with this little teeny screen.